What is up, dudes and dudettes, and all our comrades in between? This is the Rad Left with James and Casey. Today, we're taking on socialism and the coups that happen all over the world magically by themselves with no help by the U.S. The U.S. has nothing to do with it.
No, we are a great country. I love our country. This country is the best country. I don't want to live in any other country.
Yes. Same here. I vow my undying support and love I will die for this system of capitalism. It is the only system.
I shall call French fries freedom fries.
So today we have a special guest. Our first guest on the podcast, her name is Shannon Wait. She is she's an MA candidate at the College of Charleston with a focus on the modern Middle East. So she's going to talk to us a little bit about the U.S. and their interference with other socialist attempts around the world, and how that just seems to be a pretty commonplace thing. But to get us started, I guess what are some of the other things that we're going to be talking about toward the end of the show? Casey, you have things that you want to talk about after we talk about socialism?
Well, I think probably the main thing going on right now is the post office.
Yeah, the mailing.
Yeah, mailing.
Interference. Yeah.
A lot of weird confusions, a lot of pictures going around.
Mm-hmm. And then today is also the DNC, the convention starts today. So that's interesting. A lot of hullabaloo about that.
Yeah.
Woo. So that'll be boring.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so excited. Oh, man. I love watching rich, old white men congratulate themselves on being for the people while, they're on vacation, not helping us out at all during a pandemic.
And you just know it's going to lead to something worthwhile.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to get us started, I wanted to read. I'm just going to read directly from an article that was published on the Gray Zone because I just think that it does such a great job. I don't think me rewriting it, reframing it, or anything would do it any justice. So I'm just going to read right from the article. Again, this is from the Gray Zone. The article is called "Document Exposes New U.S. Plot to Overthrow Nicaragua's Elected Socialist Government." So a newly released document exposes a U.S. government operation to overthrow the democratically elected socialist government in Nicaragua. The plot is administered by the United States Agency for International Development, or also known as USAID, a regime change vehicle that uses the pretense of humanitarian aid to advance Washington's aggressive foreign policy interests. So humanitarian aid. They're going to save us from the devil's socialism.
Oh, my gosh. We don't want that.
No. Thank God for their humanitarian aid.
Mm-hmm.
The document details the creation of a new task order called Responsive Assistance in Nicaragua and its plan for Nicaragua's transition to democracy, a euphemism for removing the leftist Sandinista Front for National Liberation. In the pages, the U.S. government agency uses hardline neoconservative rhetoric, referring to Nicaragua's elected government as the Ortega regime, and making it clear that Washington wants to install a neoliberal administration that will privatize the economy, impose neoliberal reforms, and purge all institutions of any trace of the leftist Sandinista movement. The USAID regime change scheme states openly that one of its top mission goals is for Nicaragua to transition to a rules-based market economy based on the protection of private property rights. The document concludes by calling for the future U.S.-installed regime in Nicaragua to rebuild institutions and reestablish the military and police to dismantle parallel institutions that support the Sandinista Front, and to persecute the leaders through transitional justice measures, so the FSNL leaders. In other words, a thorough purge of the Sandinista movement to prevent it from ever returning to power. So they just really want to cut it out, just right at the root. And
the Sandinista movement is a socialist movement.
Yes.
And what does socialist mean again, James, for people that don't understand? It means for the people.
Yes. So it's a move toward a more egalitarian system where the the structures of the hierarchy is more evenly distributed. It's not full on it's like in between capitalism and communism.
Right.
And I'm sure our guest today, Shannon, will be able to enlighten us in much more detail. There's tons of different variations.
I'm here to
around
learn
the world. She has quite a few examples of
Good.
socialist governments that were attempted around the world,
Yeah.
and then squashed by
Us.
folks like you said here.
Yeah.
In case that was not explicit enough that Washington's goal was regime change, the 14-page USAID document employed the word transition 102 times, including 9 times on the first page alone. USAID declared its intentions to assist in what could be an orderly transition or a sudden transition without elections, which is clear code for a coup. Because if there's a transition without any kind of elections, that's just a coup.
Yeah.
At the same time, it acknowledged that Nicaragua's right-wing opposition is divided and has little chance of winning the upcoming 2021 national election. And ever since the Sandinista Front returned to power in Nicaragua through democratic elections in 2006, Washington has been hell-bent on trying to topple it. In 2018, the Donald Trump administration supported a violent coup attempt in Nicaragua in which far-right gangs took over neighborhoods and paralyzed the country with bloody barricades known as tranques. Or I believe that's a Spanish word, just by the spelling. The U.S.-backed insurgents unleashed a reign of terror, killing and injuring hundreds of Sandinista activists and state security forces, marking the homes of leftist activists, ransacking and burning some down, and torturing and threatening supporters of the elected government.
And you're saying that was backed by Trump?
Yes.
So what we're getting at here is if Trump gets reelected, basically the next time we have a protest, which they're a-coming because we got climate change and ain't things getting no better.
Yeah.
They're going to not be so obvious. Well, they're going to be totally obvious about supporting probably the Proud Boys or whoever they employ.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of like when the Rolling Stones had the motorcycle guys at Altamont beating the shit out of the hippies, paid them with beer and that became like one of the worst. It pretty much ended the '60s, the movement.
Jeez.
But yeah, it was like the dark Woodstock. They thought they could just whip together, and they didn't realize everyone was going to be bad acid going around.
Was it the Hells Angels?
Yeah, the Hells Angels. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they were just like, fuck this, riding their bikes through people. So we're going to basically have that, but it'll be
we already have a call to action about that. I think we talked about it briefly, but Trump sent out an email to all of his supporters, calling them the Trump Army, and saying that he's asking them to do what the police can't
so there we go.
won't do.
That's pretty much going to be civil war.
Yeah.
There we go.
Basically.
So that's something to look forward to.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I mean the article goes on, and I highly recommend it for folks. I wasn't too familiar with the gray zone myself. But I did some research into it, and it seems people have called into question, of course, their biases, because they do cover a lot of like more leftist socialist things from a different lens than most other American journalists do. But I read that they do send their people actually to the countries which they're reporting on, which is unusual these days. So
yeah.
So calling into question their legitimacy because they are writing from a stance of being on the side of socialists. I don't know if that's fair.
Is it possible to have a news organization that doesn't have some sort of bias, though?
No.
Even Walter Cronkite used to kind of put a little stank on some of his words here and there.
Yeah, as a former journalist myself, and one that pretended to believe fully in the idea of objective reporting, I can tell you that it's impossible. Everybody has their biases, and we just need to be okay with that. These are all politics is all about emotion and real human beings, and if you go about it robotically, just saying, well, here are the numbers, 100 people dead, billionaires made $113 billion, good for them.
That's what was funny, is I was just going to say, I wonder when we'll have our first robot newscaster. That'd be a funny skit.
Well, yeah.
I mean, we pretty much already do have that. Because you can program a robot, too.
Yeah, just as easily as you can program Tucker Carlson.
And there we go.
That's put a little bit of money into it.
There you go. He can't believe half of what he says.
Yeah.
He's a pundit. He's got an audience.
Yeah.
Just like I'm pretty sure Danzig doesn't want to sing those songs anymore, but he has to.
He's got to. All right. Well, I guess it's about time now. I think that kind of covers like a modern day or an upcoming coup that could be in the works. So we need to be keeping an eye out for Nicaragua and seeing how that goes. But for now, we're going to go back to the history of overthrowing socialist regimes or socialist governments. And we're going to be talking with our good friend. I go way back with Shannon. Her and I kind of came up together in our, through our like high school years. We hung out a lot and started a lot of intense political rants with our friends. We were always pretty. We talked about it the other day, and I think we were kind of more libertarian-esque back then, but still just very politically aware and yelling at people for not caring as much, and talking about FEMA camps and all the woke shit from the early tens.
That's good to still have a friend around that you can still feel that way with. I've got a few, but most of my friends have gone the other way, or they just don't care.
I'd say Shannon is probably the only person on my Facebook who is, I'd say, she's definitely more radical than I am. So we're happy to have a fellow rad on the rad left. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and cut over to talking with this beautiful possum here.
Yep.
So Shannon.
Don't forget, though, that I did spend a night in jail in Cleveland for saying "fuck the police."
You did.
Let's not forget.
Oh man, and that almost happened a bunch of times. You remember that time we almost got arrested in downtown Worcester because you and Katie just wouldn't stop fucking with that cop.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I want to hear about the jail story. How'd that come down?
Yeah. So what? How did the fuck the cops Cleveland jail happen?
Well, a friend of mine, I won't say her name because maybe she doesn't want me to, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
And I were at a concert and we were asked to leave because I was accused of throwing something, and we just didn't want to leave because we thought we were young, like libertarians, and we had no idea what private property and public property really meant.
Yeah.
So the House of Blues is private property. So even though I felt entitled to be there, I still was supposed to leave. And I was told I was trespassing. So I just told the cop, fuck the police. And he took me and my friend to jail in Cleveland, an hour away from where we were living. And our friends had no idea where we were all night. It was great.
Oh, boy.
But, sometimes you just have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck the police.
I almost got beat up by a Christian.
I've come a long way.
Oh, sorry. Oh, good.
I've come a long way. Like, I know now just, like, what battles to choose,
Sure. Yeah, I think that's part of getting smarter as an activist. I would say that we're activists. Have you been out to any of the protests or anything in Charleston?
Yeah, I went to a couple in the beginning.
Yeah.
But Charleston has an interesting history in that, I mean, you're familiar with the Emanuel Nine, the mother Emanuel Nine, who were murdered by a white supremacist a couple years ago at church. And Charleston continuously has this kind of passive response to situations like that, where we respond with love trumps hate. And this kind of false narrative. And then again and again, something happens here or something happens somewhere else. And we just kind of take the high road and the Southern hospitality aspect of it.
Uh-huh.
So, sorry, that's
possum,
my dog. But
your possum's barking.
so when I go to a protest here, it's not that I'm going and feeling like I'm really a part of any serious change.
Yeah.
But I do think that, obtaining a degree and trying to produce scholarship in a way is activism.
Yeah.
Because, universities are Marxist institutions
Of course
that will brainwash you.
Yeah. Yeah, go to college so you can get a good job, but don't learn too much because you don't want to be a Marxist.
Yeah. Right.
Worst imaginable thing, being a Marxist. Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying about Charleston as far as their response to the BLM thing and other acts of violence. Columbus is kind of similar in that way. Early on with the protests, like, it was a really big movement that included a lot of people, but it quickly got co-opted by this group called the
Black Freedom.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Which they were very questionable. They were very young folks, and they didn't communicate with the older activists that had been very present here in Columbus, like Surge and I'm forgetting the other one. But basically, there's these older activists that have been, demonstrating for many years, and they weren't working with them. So they immediately got into talks with the police, and very, very swiftly, and with the media. Like, that was their main thing. They loved talking with the media. And they quickly got called the leaders of the movement here in Columbus, but they didn't share any of their views, their demands, or what they were talking
They
about with
also
the police.
instigated a lot of violence and weird stuff, like yelled a lot of shit, just trying to get more. I know a guy actually who was part of it. He used to be our drummer, and he's just a nutball, but he runs this thing called Wolf Productions, and he was caused in. There's so many fucked up stories about what he was doing, and I'll have to tell you about that at some point.
Yeah.
But it was messed up watching that whole thing go down.
So it sucks seeing liberals take advantage of these situations to make them pacified and distracted, I think, from the main point. So I definitely feel what you're saying.
Right. So currently, I'm just studying history as a general subject to get my degree. But I do want to say, for people who do think that academia is a Marxist brainwashing institution, learning to become a historian isn't just learning a bunch of historical facts.
Right.
Or it's not learning what happened throughout history. What I've come to find out that being a historian actually means is that you are reading other historians' texts that they've built off of primary sources and secondary sources that are built off of primary sources. A lot of times these being government documents, journalism, and even oral histories, oral testimonies from various groups of people. And to become a successful historian, you actually have to take a field or a subject, and you have to expand on it with something that is new. So you can't just write a book about something that everyone already knows what happened unless you have a different take on it and you have something to back it up with.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people often hear that I'm trying to get a history degree, and they say, "Oh, I love history too. I love watching Ancient Aliens."
That's me, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like
And then I'm just kind of like, wow, I'm spending a lot of money and working really hard for you to feel like you can say something like that.
Yeah, like, wow, fuck me, I guess. Huh?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So basically, like, in any one semester, I might read in between 20 and 30 books.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Including
I can't
the
even get through a
footnote.
book.
I know, it's hard to
Yeah, and doing a lot of writing, and usually one big research project per class. So currently, what I'm working on is developing a thesis about Arab socialism.
Yeah.
So, in order to get your master's, you have to write a thesis that's usually between a 50 and 120 page paper, depending on if you can get your point across in however many pages. So far, I have pulled close to 60 sources for this paper.
Goodness.
And I know that I'm not even going to use all of them, and I'm going to have to look for more.
Jeez.
So, yeah.
That's
so
a lot of time and
whatever I write, yeah, it's got to be backed up by sufficient research. And
so it's not just pulling memes off of Facebook and Twitter. Is that what you're telling me? That historians?
Yeah, it's not like being upset that the news won't talk about something that you saw on the news.
Mm. Yeah.
Or, it's not like getting your information
Classic.
from Alex Jones
Oh,
or
no?
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah. You don't think Alex? So what this is like a hot take here. That Alex Jones is not a historian.
What?
This is the first time hearing about it, and you're hearing it first here on the Rad Left.
But
Or a journalist. Yeah.
he gets angry though. Like, it sounds like honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah. He constantly has a Dragon Ball Z vein in his forehead.
Frogs are gay!
Best meme.
So with Arab socialism, it's very interesting because you see how various Arab states truly want to rely on their own government and their own self, but they can't because of corruption or because of privatization or foreign investments or foreign imperialism.
Sure.
So it's very hard to accomplish a true socialist state unless other countries can just pack up and leave. And when it comes to Arab states, the majority of them, even though, of course, they've always been populated by Arab people or African people or East Asian people, when you're talking about any other country on the planet that is not North America or Europe, you are looking at a country that has existed under tutelage from another nation for pretty much from its inception.
Yeah.
So, in that case, it's just hard for them to have some sort of identity. And then when you don't have an identity, it's also hard to elect or prop up leaders who are going to be loyal to a grassroots movement and not, to whoever is filling your pockets.
Right.
And that's exactly what you would see in Latin American states as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like this whole idea that these third world countries, why can't they just pick themselves up by their bootstraps while we're constantly burning their boots or not letting them build their own boots?
I mean, if you're going to look at Latin America, you have the United Fruit Company going in, and not only are they basically taking over banana farms and using the people as slaves to, just give away their labor and their lives for free for these companies to get richer. But then those same companies that are fruit companies are also establishing the railroad industry. So not only did they own plantations across Latin America, but all of a sudden they own the entire rail system that goes into North America from Mexico. So when you monopolize something like that and you invest that much into another resource in another country,
Hmm.
then all of a sudden, those people who live in that country cannot build their homes around that area freely
Yeah.
and have their own businesses, their own farms, because railroads and plantations that are owned by another country are just prevalent.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of silly to even suggest that that we're trying to prop up capitalism in other countries. I mean, in a way that we are, but it's literally not to make a better life for the folks there. It's literally to just make it so that we have like an open channel to completely drain their resources, like against their will. I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, like I watched a documentary about how gold companies in the US will use people in Mexico to go into the rivers and basically use mercury to separate the gold in the water, and they might collect enough gold, like maybe less than an ounce of gold a day. But these people are risking getting cancer from the mercury, and they're like living dirt poor lives just so that some companies that exist in the United States can sell high value gold and have a monopoly on it, because it's the only way they can farm gold right now is to get it from liquid from the water.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh man, how benevolent of us to let them do that, to give them jobs.
Yeah, and what you were talking about with Nicaragua, like right now we're also witnessing it happen in Venezuela.
Right.
So,
which is currently the poster child of like, look how bad socialism is. Just look at Venezuela. And 99.9 of these people who are saying that know nothing about Venezuela or why they're in the position that they're in.
Yep.
Venezuela has a really bad inflation rate only because their entire economy is based on oil.
Mm-hmm.
If they had other means of distribution and, if their agricultural industry was, I mean, Maduro does try to nationalize as much as he can in Venezuela. He's fighting years of privatization that occurred under right-wing government. So, the fact that he nationalized different elements of the economy, and he has factories where clothes and shoes are made in Venezuela by Venezuelans and they're sold to Venezuelans. Like, this is something that other officials within like the US government and the Western media aren't going to like.
Sure.
And they're going to say, look at these people, they're working in factories, they're poor. It costs $12 to buy a tube of toothpaste. Well, they have heavy sanctions on Venezuela, and they won't even let anyone bring any sort of aid into their country or any like imports.
Yeah.
They won't let Venezuela import much. So they have to establish factories and such. But I will say these are also the same people who are going to bitch and moan that nothing is made in America anymore.
Right. Exactly. I was just thinking, like, imagine if if the masters of capitalism, America, could no longer import, especially from China or something. We would fall flat on our faces. That's what a joke to think that capitalism is some kind of like self-contained miracle that you don't need to drain resources from other countries.
So Maduro basically fought off an unsuccessful coup d'etat that the U.S. tried to impose on him last year. And the U.S. declared Juan Guaido as interim president of Venezuela. But Juan Guaido is a right-wing, he's basically a right-wing money boy who has ties to Washington, D.C.
Of course.
And he basically got shooed away by Maduro. And you can follow Maduro's Facebook page and Instagram, and you can see that Venezuela is, though things could be a lot better, against all odds, I would say that he is attempting to build a very successful version of socialism in Venezuela. And it's very much so built on principles from previous socialists that we have seen in Latin American history, like Fidel Castro.
Sure.
So, yeah. And Fidel Castro was not perfect, but but I will say that anytime the U.S. disagrees with a Latin American, be it a dictator or a ruler, it's because they lean a little bit too far to the left. And in doing so, they want to get rid of any privatization of foreign companies from their own country. And so a lot of what I'm writing about when it comes to Arab socialism, I focus on Libya. Mm. A lot of people, if I ask them where to find it on the map, they're not going to know.
Yeah.
It is in North Africa.
I don't think I'd be able to find it.
Yeah, it's in North Africa. It's next to Egypt.
Okay.
And both Egypt and Libya around the same time have this uprising of socialism and Arab nationalism that you don't really see in other countries until a later time or a much earlier time. There's like this weird gap between early communist international periods in the early 30s and 40s. And I think the reason why is because of the fact that fascism is so prevalent during that time that people are scared to be a blatant communist,
right,
or a Marxist or a socialist.
Mm-hmm. Can you give some definitions to some of these terms just for people that might be listening? Like, tell us, what's the difference between a socialist and a communist by chance? Or is there a difference?
Yeah, so a socialist is when workers own their own production, basically. Okay. So let's say how at Publix, if you work at Publix, you're the only ones allowed to buy shares in Publix stock. You can't buy shares in Publix stock if you don't work for Publix. In a way that, in my opinion, is kind of a socialist ideal, though I will say that the fact that the Publix CEO, of course, makes bank off of it, right, and uses near, like, as close as you can get in the modern world to slave labor of immigrants, and uses Bush administration loopholes to have undocumented immigrants picking tomatoes and throwing them away to keep them at the cheapest price that Publix can sell them. Publix is obviously, going to be a capitalist company. Their CEO is going to be a capitalist. Mm-hmm. But imagine if every worker who worked at Publix owned the equal amounts of shares. Mm-hmm. And they all reaped a profit based off of Publix's profits after they've paid for any, products and labor and this and that. If everyone made the same amount of profit off of Publix's shares, that would be a great example of socialism on a small scale.
Sure.
When communism is state sanctioned or state implemented socialism in a way, because mm-hmm. Karl Marx did say that socialism is the step towards full communism mm-hmm. after the collapse of late stage capitalism. But a lot of problems when it comes to communist regimes, and regime doesn't have to be a bad word in this context. But when you're talking about a communist government, you're going to be looking at other ways of enforcing it, like I will say that even though the leader of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, um, hated communism, and he said so in his book, he basically took property away from landlords. He took property away from Italians who had lived in Libya for decades because it was an Italian colony before it was an Arab state. So, in enforcing certain things like rent control and moving property from one hand to the other, I would say that is one small element of being a communist government.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that he wanted to get rid of wage labor, and it was full. He wanted to have an economy based fully on partnerships, and he also wanted to make sure that there was no such thing anymore as maids and taxi drivers, because he said that made you basically a slave to the system. Like if you are a maid and you're given a home as part of your employment and as part of your wage, you're not free to leave because you live there. Mm-hmm. So that is why he wanted to get rid of like domestic servants, taxi drivers, and things like that.
So that's interesting that he so openly disparaged communism in his book. Do you think that's just because communism is a no-no word and he was, kind of playing that card, trying to avoid being associated with the boogeyman word of communism?
No, it was because as an Islamist, communism to him meant that you're an atheist.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, that is interesting. So that is why one of the foundations of Arab socialism is, I call it Islamic light, like Bush light, because it's not so, we're not so big on being an Islamic state. And that never really was the thing until you start seeing more Western control and Western privatization of these Arab states. Under Gaddafi, yes, Islam was it was basically the state religion, but they still didn't enforce certain traditional values on people who lived there, like women weren't forced to dress a certain way. But now that Gaddafi is gone, you have women who fight in ISIS while wearing the full burqa.
Jesus.
And it's the all black burqa.
Right.
So you see a more fundamentalist and extremist shift towards religion when you do get rid of these Arab socialist leaders.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, the right-wing authoritarianism and extremist religious beliefs go hand in hand in fascism. So, I mean, that makes total sense to me.
Has there ever been a country that's made? I'm sorry. Has there ever been a country that's made socialism work perfectly, or like in your opinion, like what's a good list of countries next time I get into a fight with some fucking asshole on Facebook?
Chad.
Yeah, some Chad. Whether I can just
we could just say that Switzerland and Denmark are good examples, but they're more democratic socialists.
Yeah, that's still under capitalism. Right.
Yeah. And they don't take sides when it comes to, you don't really see them say, oh, these people are really oppressed in this other country. We should, stand up in the UN and say something about that. They don't do that. So they mind their own business. They provide general welfare to their country. And and then you don't ever hear anything about them.
So they're kind of trying not to ruffle any feathers so that the U.S. or the U.K. don't try to fuck with them.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might revive Theresa May's corpse instead.
Oh God.
Would you say?
But also,
Sorry, that lag keeps.
go
getting-
ahead.
I was gonna say, would you say we even have capitalism in America anymore, or is it something more akin to corporatism? Have we moved beyond capitalism and now we're I don't even know if that's an actual term, but I heard someone once call, we're now in a corporatism phase where, I mean, there could have been benefits to capitalism to a degree, but we're probably not even really seeing those, or would you agree with that at all?
I think that suggesting that we live under corporatism is a really libertarian take, because that is something that I used to say, is that capitalism isn't bad, it's corporatism or it's crony capitalism. Because, a lot of times people believe that capitalism means that you can achieve whatever you want to achieve and you can earn as much money as you can. That's just not true. Like, I did not win life's lottery and get a small loan of $1 million from my dad to start a company.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's definitely capitalism when there's someone who is basically a wealth hoarder, such as Jeff Bezos, while the rest of his workforce is working for $15 or less an hour during a pandemic, while he has made massive profits during the pandemic.
Yeah,
so
what
I would
was
say in
something
that
like
case,
$40 billion or something, just from the beginning of the pandemic.
capitalism isn't working. And according to Karl Marx, wages should increase as profit increases.
Yeah.
I agree.
And that in late stage capitalism, that's not gonna happen. We have wage stagnation now.
Right. Yeah, I think
and-
that's the main point here, is that this is just exactly what capitalism is supposed to do. The idea that most people have of capitalism is this idea of the free market, meaning that anybody can be a millionaire, blah, blah, blah. But as you move through the years of that kind of thing, you start seeing these giant monopolies taking over and crushing down the average person who maybe, back in the 50s or 60s could have started a business that could have made a decent amount of money for them. They just get crushed. And by using like regulation and just, other loopholes like tax abatements and whatnot, to just dominate the market. And that's that is the exact end goal of capitalism, is to have the smallest amount of people who are mega wealthy versus a massive majority of really poor people.
Yeah, okay. Come to think of it, I think I heard that from a libertarian anyways, the corporatism thing.
Yeah.
I think it was a term I did hear from it.
It's easy to blame
Also,
corporations. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. A friend of mine basically said, well, what about generosity?
Generosity
there's billionaires.
of the billionaires?
Yeah, there's billionaires and millionaires who consider themselves philanthropists.
Yeah.
And whether they have good intentions or not, just because you paid money to build a hospital, if I can go there and leave bankrupt or risking bankruptcy, were you really a philanthropist if you're the CEO of a big pharmaceutical company? My tax dollars are funding research and development in the drug industry. But if I was diabetic, I would have to spend at least $800 a month on insulin that my taxes originally went to, or people's taxes originally went to, in order to develop that drug. And I just think, in a way, that is socialism that benefits them. And it's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Bernie talked about that a lot, about the idea of corporate socialism and socialism for the very wealthy, but absolute individualism for the rest of us, who actually are the ones who could really benefit from the socialist programs.
Yeah, AOC said, socialism for who?
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
But I do want to say, when it comes to these leftist countries, you have to pay attention to the nationalism and compare it to American nationalism. So one of the biggest fundamentals and foundations of Arab socialism is Arab nationalism, an identity, because these people didn't have an identity even, during the Ottoman Empire. Everything has always been controlled by different European states. In Libya, it would be Italy. Even during World War II, they called Mussolini the protector of Islam.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. And countries like Libya and Egypt considered turning towards fascism because at the time, all they knew is they had monarchies who didn't care about the people at the bottom. And they were still in debt to Great Britain and Italy and France. So Arab nationalism is huge. Like you see in the 60s and the 50s, women in Egypt not wearing a hijab, wearing pants, wearing their hair however they want. They look like, Sharon Tate. They look like old, movie stars. And then all of a sudden, after the leftist and more, I hate this word, but I will say sometimes they're more liberal president is gotten rid of from those countries, you actually see things take a more fundamental shift, like I said earlier. So in the 70s in Egypt, you actually have women start wearing the hijab again as a response to Israeli aggression in Egypt after the war between Israel and Palestine in the 1960s. So you see these countries start wearing their hijab and the men wearing the thobe in order to, and even in the earlier 20th century, the men wearing the fez in order to say, look at you, is like Israeli imperialists. You have brought us to an awakening of what we as Arabs look like and we're going to look like from here on out. So you see today, if you go to Egypt, there will more than likely be most of the people there wearing hijab, and it's mainly to assert some sort of identity. And you still have the religious aspect of it, but I do think it is more about the identity than it is about anything else.
Okay. Yeah, so that seems like that's probably a very common misconception as far as most the average American looking at that and seeing it as simply like religious extremism and misogyny. I believe that's pretty common thought for the average American.
Yeah, and Arab nationalism was more about unity and less about identity. So most philosophers like Charles Malik from the early 20th century wrote about how Arabs need to unify and come together unite and come together in order to basically get rid of imperialism. So they're talking about standing up to countries like Great Britain, Italy, France, Israel, the United States, and not in an aggressive way, but if they were to all come together, it would be so much harder for the U.S. to drill off of the shores of Libya and turn around and sell that oil to Great Britain at a time when Great Britain wasn't doing too hot after World War II. You would see those countries actually reaping their own profits from their own resources, charging the amount of money that they want to charge at a fair price, and then using it to invest in their own public sectors like hospitals, universities, and this and that. But then when you have British Petroleum coming in, and they are given the rights to survey off of the coast of Libya, all of a sudden you have a huge poor population who can't go to the hospital because their government isn't making enough money off of the only resource that they have.
Yeah, geez. So why do you think? Was there an active coup put together by the U.S. Against Libya at some point, like an actual like insurgency?
Yeah, so in 2011, Gaddafi was actually killed in Libya from a Libyan revolution. There were rebels who killed him. A lot of sources imply that those rebels might have been funded by NATO.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously there's going to be interest in controlling someone they could no longer control. But what's funny about Gaddafi is in the last 10 years of his life, he really shifted towards privatization and away from socialism. He wanted to start, basically, he wanted Libya to be open for business. He even paid Donald Trump almost $200,000 to set up a tent on one of his estates so that he could live in his like Bedouin style tent for a weekend when he had to go deliver a speech to the United Nations.
Jeez.
Do you see much similarities between the Libyan situation and the Bolivian situation that happened recently too? Have you done much research on that one?
Well, I only know stuff about Bolivia on a surface level. I know that the coup was definitely right-wing in Bolivia and that it was most likely funded from outside countries. And that the new leader is basically declared a leader from the outside as well. It wasn't really like the people are saying she is our new president or prime minister. I don't know what they call her. But I will say that Libya is more similar to Venezuela because they both have strictly oil-based economies that can cripple their entire country if, for any reason, sanctions are placed or it is taken away from them.
Yeah, I heard there was an interest in the lithium in Bolivia by chance because it helps make cell phones. I don't know if there's any accuracy to that, but
yeah, I think about that every day. Because I work at a Google data center.
Oh, fun.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just think about the Bolivians while I work.
Well, like many of our comrades say, there's no ethical consumption in late-stage capitalism. So, yeah.
So buy that shirt you like.
Yeah, so just have no qualms with just eating down as much steak as possible.
Yeah, you might as well.
Yeah, fuck it.
Like,
let's go.
You can support a small business, but if they're not paying their employees like a decent wage, then they don't deserve to be in business.
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
And I hope they fail.
All right. Well, before we go to our little ad break, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we switch over?
Yeah. I would like to just, remind people that if they PayPal me $1,000, I might vote for Joe Biden.
Oh, that's great. What is your PayPal link? Maybe you're
I don't know.
Maybe you can be bought. You don't know what it is? All right. Well, we'll update folks about your PayPal link. See if we can get you that $1,000.
You sound like you have a lot of information. We got to have you back on this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're just touching the surface here, and it seems like you have a wealth of knowledge. So we'd love to have you back on.
I need to do more research.
Yeah. We'll have another whenever your next class project is, we'll run with that. So for now, we're going to cut to our ads, and then when we get back, we'll see if anybody in the comment section has any questions for you, and if not, then we can just bullshit a little bit, and then we can let you go and get on with your day, because I'm sure you're very busy. But yeah, we'll be back in just a few moments.
All right.
Sweet. Two commies talk about Colt 45.
When owning the libs is tastier with a boot in your mouth. Colt 45.
For when the anti-fascists are the real fascists. Colt 45.
If you're more concerned with immigrants taking your job than billionaires taking your labor, Colt 45. So smooth.
When wearing a mask is just too damn hard. Colt 45.
If you're more afraid of black people than a global pandemic, you might want to get yourself a Colt 45. Almost puked.
When you drank so much your cousin starts looking real fine. Colt 45.
If Law and Order means anything more to you than a TV show, grab yourself a Colt 45.
When you win every Facebook debate with zero sources. Colt 45.
If you call yourself a Christian but think Jesus was white, Colt 45.
When losing a war to keep your slaves is the only heritage to be proud of. Colt 45.
If Fox News is the only place you can get your information on the world's events, crack open a Colt 45.
If you can't spell there, or your properly, Colt 45. The power of Colt 45. It's so fucking stupid.
Hey there, my name is Christy Johnson Sadler, and I'm the Paranormal Hypnotist. I teach people how to connect with dimensional energies and explore hidden knowledge and memories to create positive change in their life.
And I'm Alex, the not-so-important co-host and half-hearted audio engineer with an eager ear for the paranormal. Do you like listening to scary stories around the campfire? Or trading tales of intrigue around the water cooler?
Maybe watching Leonard Nimoy on In Search Of, or Robert Stack on Unsolved Mysteries.
Have you ever stayed up till 4 a.m., chain-smoking cigarettes, pounding energy drinks and Cheetos, researching the underhanded imperialist satanic reptilian plot housed in the underground Masonic-funded temples, hell-bent on suppressing the existence of Bigfoot while keeping the Ark of the Covenant at the bottom of the Oak Island money pit in order to continue the status quo of the riot-inducing question of which way to face a toilet paper roll?
Wow, all that from around a campfire, huh? I think you need some new hobbies.
Don't tell me what I need. All I need is to get into Camp David, then find out who has the key passes to the Dolce Bay.
He'll be back. Catch us every week on the Supernatural Tendencies podcast, where we'll cover oddities, conspiracies, and things that go bump in the night. See you soon.
And we're back. So I hope you enjoyed those ads. I know I did.
I did.
Yay. And I'm sure our friend Shannon enjoyed them just as much.
Mm-hmm.
I sure did.
Yes. No, actually, during the break, we were talking about our other podcast that we like to listen to, and
yeah,
Shannon was talking to us about the last podcast on the left. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny, and they have a lot of historical episodes.
Yeah, I need to check that out.
I like the one about John Lennon's killer, Mark David Chapman. I thought that was a good one.
Oh, I need to listen to that one.
That's a good one. It's like a two-parter, I think.
Nice.
The Rasputin one was good.
Ooh,
yeah. Well,
I would love the Rasputin one.
I might have heard that one.
Yeah.
I love like Russian history. I've always been a huge fan of Russian literature, and I just love their whole like culture, just how like Kafkaesque it is.
the people who host that podcast thought that what happened to the Tsar and his family was sad. But I think it's great.
Well, yeah, we think it's sad because we grew up watching Anastasia.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh no, the poor princess, because we all want to grow up to be princesses. Yeah, I said it. We all want to be princesses. I said it. I don't give a fuck. I want to be a princess.
Yeah, we do.
I want to be Jasmine. I want to own a pet tiger.
We keep coming back to this, the French Revolution style killing of people.
I'd like to make that a more common theme.
Yep.
This idea of just violently usurping tyrannical governments.
That's the only way it's gonna happen, man. It's not our fault. You push us against the wall. We're gonna bite.
So, Shannon, what do you self-identify as? Do you consider yourself a full-on communist, an anarchist, or what's your bent?
I guess I would just say Marxist-Leninist.
Okay. So yeah, you're a little bit more a little bit more militant than, I guess, if my understanding of Leninist versus the other variations of Marxist.
Stalinist would definitely be
Stalinist.
militant.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
That's
Leninist. It's just about implementing, the philosophies of Marx throughout the state, and I really appreciate religion.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I don't practice one, so I wouldn't just go and say that I'm a communist, but I do like to say it when I want to hurt other people's feelings.
Yeah. Hurt their feelings by having your own opinion.
Yeah.
Man, it's crazy how much that hurts these folks.
Me and James get into debates a lot with people.
It does. Yeah. Just the other night we got into a pretty heated debate with two very. The one guy said that he was a socialist, and that just absolutely cannot be the.
There's no way. I don't think they understand what's going on. They just don't. They're like a lot of centrists. They're just not looking very deeply into the picture.
Yeah.
Like, he probably thought that Elizabeth Warren is a leftist.
You're right.
Socialist.
Like, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, when I was like upset that, Bernie endorsed Biden, all of these people like came out of the woodwork to be like, what are you talking about? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys just don't understand. Like, Bernie was the compromise, man. Like,
He was not even a leftist.
He's not a leftist. No, he's still very much a capitalist. Like, he's not, and an imperialist. Yeah.
But he's not as bad as those others.
Yes. Right.
And honestly, the way I picture it happening is Obama calling Pete Buttigieg over the phone, but more so holding a knife against his neck and being like, drop out.
Drop out, motherfucker.
I know you have more delegates than my buddy, but you need to drop out. And then one by one, they start dropping out.
Oh my God. Can you guys even imagine back then, like, thinking that Biden was going to be the one?
No.
I can't believe it.
I did have a moment a few years ago where I thought, when Trump first got elected, where I was like, the next president, maybe it should be Biden.
Yeah.
Only because I thought that he could win against Trump back then. But not now, because we have come back so many years that we need somebody like Bernie to undo the damage. We don't need Biden to bring us back to where we were when Obama was the president.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. That's where a lot of the major overreaches that we're seeing in the executive office today, that's where it all began.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't begin there. Let me be clear. But some massive overreaching was established during the Obama administration.
Do you think we're just essentially fucked, or do we have any hope for ever getting this country?
There's no hope.
No hope.
Yeah. There's
no hope or change anymore.
Really isn't.
Thanks, Obama.
Hey, so anybody out there, if you're listening and you have a question for our guest, or you just want to say something about my beard, I don't care, something, whatever you want to say, just make a little comment.
Yeah. So during our discussion earlier, I'll go ahead and pull it up on the screen here. Garrett had said that it's almost like you need an engaged citizenry to hold people to account.
Yeah.
So I mean, what do you think about that, Shannon? Like, do we need like people to be more politically aware, or like is that like I don't know what's the best way to like wake up the people and like unite?
Well, the problem with most people in our generation today and younger, like some Generation Z people who are on the more educated side as far as existing in the realm of an established academia.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is a lot of them aspire to be interns for any political candidate who will take them.
Mm.
Like, they're really competitive positions in campaigns, and these, students usually volunteer and participate in mock UN.
Mm-hmm.
I know a few of them who have similar views to me, but they were so 100% on board with either Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren this past time.
Yeah.
And I think that the biggest issue with it is it's just they want to work for somebody, so then they have to support them, whether they believe that they're right or not. But one of the people that I do know, who I took many years of Arabic classes with, she made a video on her Instagram talking shit about Bernie at one of his events and making fun of him. But it's like, you work for Elizabeth Warren and you're doing this. What kind of things are you hearing in your staffer meetings to be saying that Bernie is too old to be the president? And
Jesus.
then the same person is going to support Joe Biden being the official nominee of the Democratic Party.
Right. Oh my God.
Yeah. So the hypocrisy and just it's not even that they're ignorant, because they know better.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. It's like I don't even know if like educating folks on the issues is even going to solve anything, because I mean, what good does it do for us, like the three of us and, some of our more radical listeners, to like know that this could all be better under socialism or communism, but we'll just never have the hope because we can't start anything because we'll starve to death if we don't involve ourselves heavily in the capitalist system.
And it's not even about eradicating capitalism or establishing socialism when it comes to how I feel. Mm-hmm. What I feel is that it is the government's responsibility to make sure that billionaires are not acquiring so much wealth, and that people who pay more taxes than them can't afford to go see a doctor. That is all that I care about. I don't care about someone like Bernie being the president if he's not going to achieve anything like that.
Right.
Like Elizabeth Warren, she was so for Medicare for all in the beginning and erasing student loan debt. And I would have been down with her over Bernie if she was equally, if she had equal footing with him.
Yeah.
But the thing that turned me off on her was not only that she's a snake, but the fact that she, on her student loan website, you had a calculator, and when I entered how much loans I had and how much money I make a year, she was only going to erase the total amount of my student loans by $30,000. That's not erasing student loans.
Jesus.
Yeah, so
not at all.
Said to myself, there's no way I would ever vote for her.
Right.
In the primaries. Maybe in the general if she was the nominee, but I wouldn't say that about anybody else, not Pete, not Kamala, and not Joe.
So what are your thoughts on the idea of harm reduction, vote blue no matter who, lesser of two evils, Chomsky thought?
I get it. I get why people feel that way, and I don't want to talk badly about those people.
Sure.
Because a lot of my friends feel that way.
Uh-huh.
The people that I drag when I make a comment or a Facebook post in opposition to something that they might have to say are the people who pretend to be so invested in the political system They pretend to know so much and to be an educated and an aware voter. And they are enthused with these choices. They think they're great choices. That is the problem that I have. I know someone who originally said that she liked Kamala Harris at first, and then she liked Elizabeth Warren, but finally she's settling on Pete Buttigieg.
Jesus.
Because he's
How?
just so nice. Because he's so nice.
Oh my
The bar
God.
is that low that you want to choose someone who is nice. No, not only that, but she went to every candidate but Bernie.
Yep.
I don't get why people would choose any candidate but Bernie in a situation like that when he's the only one talking about Medicare for all,
Yeah.
college for all.
Yeah.
Like,
He's the one that
How-
created the fucking fervor for Medicare for all. But we can't, like, everybody's talking about Medicare for all now. That is a common thing now where we're asking, like, oh, is Joe Biden? No, Joe Biden will shoot it down. Okay, well, that's fine, but maybe in the
Medicare
future.
for all who want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people are
And I
not.
have a problem with that because basically what that means is there's people who can afford private insurance that will give them the best of the best.
Yeah.
Those people, Medicare for all who want it, aka for those who can't afford private insurance, they get longer waiting times to get into the hospitals.
Yeah.
They get maybe hospitals in their area that aren't up to par with standards that a billionaire might have.
Sure.
I think that private insurance should not even be allowed because then you are basically able to say that I can afford something that is turned into a commodity that someone else can't afford, but they need. And so there's competition in the health in the health insurance market and in the medical technology division.
Yeah. I mean, basically,
There's
it's just
no
saying
competition.
that it's just saying that, like, you have to have money to be able to afford to live. Like, that's just how serious it's gotten. And the fact that that doesn't even seem weird to most people is just, like, I don't know, it's just horrifying to me.
I will say that when my mom got sick, she went to the emergency room with a collapsed lung and begged the doctor not to diagnose her or run any tests because she didn't have insurance. And at the time, it would have been a pre-existing condition that would have made it very hard for her to have coverage.
Jesus
And
Christ.
it's against the law for a doctor not to diagnose someone. So they ran tests and they found that same day that she had like stage 3 lung cancer. So someone who has lung cancer is begging not to have tests run just so that they can get covered by insurance later down the road when they might be able to afford it.
Jesus Christ.
It's a sad situation and it shouldn't be happening in the United States.
Yeah, in the richest country in the world, quote unquote.
Right.
I love that idea that we're the richest country in the world. And, you know, what is it, 40% of us live under the poverty line?
Right.
It's fucking asinine.
Yeah, so if it's not Medicare for all and it's not Bernie's bill, I really am not voting for you. But
Yeah.
I won't talk badly about my friends who begrudgingly vote for the Biden Harris ticket.
Sure, absolutely, and I respect that. I think that it's getting really vicious out there. In a lot of the leftist circles that I run in on Facebook, it's just getting absolutely, it's just filled with vitriol, and I'm at this point now where I'm like, just let people vote how they fucking want to vote,
Yeah,
and
I'm
stop
becoming
shaming
so
each
apathetic.
other. What was that?
I'm becoming so apathetic.
Yeah.
And, but the people who are thrilled about this, selection, they are part of the problem. In fact, they are the problem.
Yep. I can't imagine anybody being thrilled about this. That just blows my mind.
That's
I
what-
saw some people sharing, like, posts about it with, like, hearts.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I saw that with Kamala. People were excited about Kamala, but like,
yeah, they're
Can-
so excited about her.
yeah. And I guess I can get it, from a just purely aesthetic choice. You're like, whoa, this if Joe Biden only serves one term, very likely we will have the first woman,
Yeah, she's
black
young.
Indian woman president, and that's from an aesthetic point of view, that's pretty cool. And I'm on, that'd be historic, and that's great. Just I wish she wasn't a cop.
Yeah, I wish she wasn't a right winger.
Yeah. So for the elections, what is, and you don't have to tell us if you don't want to, because this is a very personal thing, but what are your plans? Are you planning on staying home this time, or voting third party, or what's your technique?
Well, we have the best chance to get rid of Lindsey Graham in this election than we ever have. So Jamie Harrison is running against Lindsey Graham.
Great.
And he is like tied in polls, but I don't always know if I should trust polls.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people want Jamie to win, so they're, from out of state, they're donating to his campaign. In fact, I almost went to work on his campaign, and when I was asked in an online interview why I'm a Democrat, I was like, I don't want to be on this campaign anymore. Literally, that's
Almost
how it
had
went.
you.
Yeah, but I do think that it's very important that he replace Lindsey Graham, so I definitely am going to go vote.
Great.
Joe Cunningham is a representative who was the first blue seat we've had in that district in over 20 years, but he is so centrist. He doesn't want a Green New Deal, but all he does is talk about the environment. He's one of those liberals that thinks if we pick up trash, we can turn the ship around.
Right. That's just grifting and idealism. Yeah,
Yeah. He
Just
thinks
gross.
he's a badass because he tried to bring a six-pack onto the floor of Congress like his first week. And he drinks beer, and I actually have seen him at Whole Foods a few times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So he's
but
drinking that Whole Foods beer.
Yeah, but his dad's a Republican judge from Kentucky.
Ah.
Yeah.
That makes
So,
sense. Just a bunch of
yeah.
grifters.
Yeah, so, it does suck, but I have to go vote for Jamie Harrison.
Mhm.
And I'll probably give a vote to either the Green Party or the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
Yeah.
To Gloria de la Rive.
Uh-huh.
Because if they get enough votes, they get like $5,000 from the federal government.
Right.
Yeah, so I want them to have some money. So
Yep.
I'm not voting for Biden.
Yeah, that's my plan too. I'm definitely going Green Party. I like the Hawkins Walker ticket.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that pissed me off when they were like, "Oh, Kamala's the first, black woman VP pick," and then Angela Walker's like, "Excuse me."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Could have had Nina Turner.
Oh yeah, Nina Turner.
That would have been a nice one.
She's saying not to vote for Biden.
Wow.
Yeah, I like her a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
She's spicy.
I got to meet her once.
Did you?
Yeah, we held a Bernie benefit, and her and Susan Sarandon showed up.
Really?
Yeah, they talked and shit. I got video.
Oh yeah, I ran into her at something too. She's
Yeah, that's right. I saw a picture of you sitting like right in front of her, right, or right behind her.
Yep.
yeah. And all these people, all these waspy old white ladies who are like Charleston, like, I'm from Charleston. And, we like to have brunch on Sunday after we go to church. These types of old ladies, they were like, what's Susan Sarandon doing here? And I said, she's with the Bernie campaign. And they made the most disgusted face at me and turned around really slowly.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
I got her voice on my phone here somewhere.
Oh yeah? You
Yeah.
like recorded her?
Yeah. Well, I recorded it for my wife's podcast.
Oh, cool.
Because she wanted her to do something, but
You do like a little.
I was about to say that's kinky.
yeah, I know. Wouldn't that be cool? She's attractive. Not gonna lie, I sure like her in that Rocky Horror movie.
Yeah, that really new flick.
Yeah.
Just check it out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that about covers it for today. Did you have anything else that you wanted to tell people? Maybe somewhere they can follow you on Instagram or Twitter. I don't know if you are doing that stuff, but
yeah, you can search my actual name on Twitter and find me because it's at Ringo_1964, and then Instagram is just Ringo1964.
awesome.
But I don't really use Twitter too much.
Yeah, it's kind of
Unless
it's an odd platform.
Retweet Joe Biden and threaten him.
Like, you socialist.
I retweeted him and said, "Good," or "Cool. Now turn and face the wall."
Love it. Love it. Just threaten him with some gulags.
Yeah.
All right, Shannon. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. It was great getting to talk with you. It was, like I said at the beginning, we go way back. And it's really cool to see some hometown friends who are, really staying educated and really pushing for leftist policies. And I think the future is unknown right now, but it's looking pretty fascist. So we need as many bright minds as we can.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
Nice virtually meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Yep.
All right, and to all of our listeners, thank you for sticking with us, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode and listening to Shannon talk about socialism and the American efforts to stomp it out. Hopefully we get the U.S. gets a lot more chances to stomp out socialism, because hopefully there's a lot more socialism rising up throughout the world. I think that would be great. Doubt it, but I think it would be great.
If not, it's going to be French Revolution style.
Woo! Guillotines! Let's do it!
Something's coming.
Love it. All right, guys, wear a mask.